Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome again to the Blac Moment. I am your host, Cornelius Coyote. You call me the Black Shrek. Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to the Blac Moment. Today, I have with me this incredible young lady. I would like her to introduce herself to you.
So my name is Isabelle Lewis, and the way that Cornelius and I connected and know each other is because I'm a trip leader for a company called HXP. And so this year, 2025, I'll be heading into my third season with them. But my first season with them, I came out to Awesome Fosu, Ghana, and got to work with Cornelius on a really special school project. So I work in a lot of outreach. I just finished another about 6-week stint out here in Ghana working with a different outreach program at an orphanage and a school and a medical center. And that's kind of just like my whole world and how you and I really connect.
Yeah. I've been working with this same organization as a local coordinator for about 7 years now.
Yeah.
This year's I think this year would be the second time that HXP did not actually come to Ghana, but 2025 will be happening, which I'm really excited about. We'll be building 2 classrooms here in Ghana. But you know, something that really made me happy is just that having you back here in Ghana, and when you called me and told me that you'll be coming back to Ghana.
Yeah.
I was really, really excited, but even more excited when I got to find out that you'll be going down to that orphanage, you know, to work with these children.
Yeah.
I was really happy for these children because I have seen you kind of like just do your magic with these things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I have like this 19 kids with you, and you just knowing how to like just get them to bond, you know, just be able to give them a space to be able to express themselves and stuff like that. And this kind of like brings me to the question that how do you do this? How do you do this?
So for me, so the way the HXP works when we're out here, for those that don't know, is usually a trip leader will come out for like a 4 to 5 week period of time. And they'll get 2 separate groups. So the first group is usually like 18 to 20 teenagers, and they'll stay for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll leave, and a second group will come. And it's you and one other trip leader, and you really are kind of like mom and dad. You really kind of like fill those roles and are fulfilling all the needs that these children have. And so far, I don't really have a kid yet that has not referred to me as mom, like within like the first couple of days. And I think that's because when I'm with these children, whether it's in an orphanage or with HXP or honestly, even at home working as a KG teacher, I think I just love like the idea of motherhood so much. And I love the idea of love so much that I seem to have this ability to just pour myself into them. And so I look at these kids and I say, these kids need a listener. And these kids need an empathizer, and these kids need somebody that will hug them and tell them I love you. And also these kids need someone to relate to, and they need someone to have fun with. And I just find ways to be something for every child. We were driving the other day and I saw this big sign that said, everybody needs somebody. And I try and see the somebody that those children need. And so I look at their different needs and I see what they're trying to communicate to me, whether they're actually saying that or whether I'm kind of interpreting the signs or the signals from this child. And I say, oh, that child needs this. Okay. Then I'll brainstorm with myself, you know, how can I be better for this? And I think that's how I kind of ended up becoming Moti, was by doing that, and it was by really reading into these children and giving everything I had. I think that's the thing about motherhood, or being a trip leader, or being a friend, or whatever you want to categorize anything as, is you kind of just have to pour yourself into people. And I seem to have this ability to turn this switch on where I just kind of give them everything I've got. And it's kind of like losing myself in them, but then it comes back to me and I feel like I've lost myself in them, but yet I'm finding myself at the same time. The more I love them, the more I love myself. And I think the more that they see of me, the more rawness, the more vulnerability, the more the more encouragement, the more that I just open up, the way that they start to blossom back towards me. And so in a way, I guess you could consider it like I risk everything that I am in purpose of hoping that they will give me everything that they are.
Wow, that's beautiful. I I feel so lucky to have experienced what you're talking about. I've experienced it in person, so I would say I'm a witness to this, you know. And when you actually told me that you'll be working with these children at the orphanage, I was super excited for the kids at the orphanage because I know what you'll be bringing to them. I know you'll be bringing so much love, like putting in effort and all that. And those kids really need it because most of these kids have gone through the worst of the worst kind of like situation, and they're still battling a lot of things, and they need love. They need someone that would listen to them. And I know that you would be that person for them. And this is something that takes me to this aspect of like motherhood, as you say. I know I call you Moti, because yes, you were just like, you know, mother to this teens, and teens are kind of like the hardest to, like, to like work with. Yes, but you were able to like just work with these things and like be able to listen to them, give them a play, that person that they needed, you know, and stuff like this. And it's kind of like just take me to what I actually believe fatherhood is, because I feel like fatherhood is not just you biologically birthing a child, and most of these things that we are talking about, you couldn't have been their mother, because if you would be any of them's mother, so you would have to be pregnant at 5, you know, 6, you know, but you are still mother to them because you poured yourself out. So what is really, I want to hear your perspective of what motherhood should be.
I'm not a mom biologically to any child at this point in time, but I love being a mom, whatever that looks like. And I think being a mother, I think motherhood is all about like rawness. Like, people and children will attach themselves to you when they see your rawness, when they see your vulnerability, when they see your desire to serve them. I think motherhood is a lot about serving another human being. Really, to be a mother biologically or mentally, or however you want to define motherhood with a child, it's all about being selfless. And it's about setting aside your own individual pursuits in the pursuits of that child. And to me, that's what being a mother is. And I personally have a wonderful mother who does the most for me, but also she's brought into my life, and other avenues have brought into my life a whole plethora of mothers. So I have mothers from HXP that have come as parent builders. I have my own mom, even my sister in some ways is a mother, my grandmother. I have like friends that are older that feel like mothers, and it's these women that encircle me. And they make me feel powerful, and they make me feel uplifted. And it's this group of mothers that I've had that I feel has taught me how to be a mother to these children. And so when I connect with these children and I know who they are, I make the conscious effort to say, hey, it's not about me anymore. It's just about them. And I think the second that you have that viewpoint about a child, that's when you become a mother, a father, a guardian, or a friend of some kind. And then when you can just be open and raw and real with them, like children, and like when I say children, like all children up until they're 18 years old, they are so much smarter than we give them credit for. And I think they're actually so easily able to read an adult. And so if you are being fake with that child, or if you're being insincere with that child, they're going to know. And if you're being real with that child, and you're being vulnerable with that child, and if you're showing this child sides of you that they might have not thought they would see upon first experience, they're going to know that. And if they know that, they're going to attach to you. And that's when that motherhood bond creates. That's why all of my HXP kids call me mom or mama B, because the way that I feel about them, I always tell them, like, I might not be your mom, but you're definitely my kid. Like, you're my kid all the way, 100%. And it doesn't come from biology. It comes from love and vulnerability and that emotional attachment that I've created. Sometimes that biological attachment just isn't enough if you're not bringing in the emotional side of things.
I totally concur to this because I have one of the boys from the orphanage. He works with me presently.
Yeah.
And one day he came to my house and he called me father, and my wife turned and was like, and then
We have a kid.
and the moment he left, she was like, does he really call you father? It's like, I'm like, yes. I'm like, why? I'm his father.
Yeah.
and I think just as you said, motherhood, true motherhood is like just pouring yourself out, and that's the same thing with fatherhood too. And I like it when you even said that it's not about that aspect of like suffocating and just ownership and all that.
Yeah.
And it's not about you. And I think most time we make it so much about us.
Totally.
You know? It is more about the child. It's nothing about me.
Yeah.
And most time we take our own pain, our own traumas and stuff like that, and want to correct it with the child in a way, instead of allowing the child to be the child and doing those things that kind of like benefit the child, not for our own personal kind of like glory and stuff like that. Yeah. And this would lead me to this other aspect, which I actually feel like it's something I have seen with every single person that genuinely poured himself out this way. I have noticed that each of those people kind of like always come from a place of some kind of like pain.
Yeah.
What is that pain? What's that story that drives you?
I think there's lots of stories where that kind of derives from my life, and I'll kind of just explain them maybe in a chronological order. But when I was 11, my dad was in a really bad accident. He was cycling on the road and was hit by a car, and he suffered a lot of injuries. But one of the main injuries that he suffered is something called a traumatic brain injury, a TBI. And because of that, my dad's emotional sensors became off kilter. And it's a little less easy for him to feel emotions like love or empathy, and it's a little easier for him to feel emotions like anger or frustration. And so I kind of grew up in a household with one parent that was super emotional, my mom super in tune with emotions, and one parent that was not like that. And I think that was difficult. And so when I was about 14, I just started to notice like a lot of feelings of, to me at the time, it just kind of felt like sadness. And I had a couple little jobs, and I felt like when I'd go to these jobs, like they weren't hard, but for some reason, like on the inside, I was like freaking out, and it kind of felt like I was freaking out for no reason. And then it would kind of put me in this spiral, and all throughout my life, from elementary school until right now, honestly, I feel like I'm somebody who I'll gain a friend and I pour everything I have into them, and they end up leaving, or they end up doing something, and it feels like all of my efforts to really create beautiful friendships are kind of in vain. And so when I was 14, I was feeling all these feelings, and I finally one day went to my mom and I was like, I think something's wrong with me. Like, I really feel like something is wrong with me. I'm not watching other kids my age, or I'm not watching anybody, honestly, act and feel the way that I'm feeling about these emotions right now. And that kind of led into this spiral, and my mom didn't really know what I was talking about. And finally, it kind of led to this conclusion and diagnosis of having clinical depression and anxiety. And for me, we've talked about this, but it was like finally putting a name on something. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, honestly, there were some days where I was like, am I crazy? Like, am I mentally like insane? And I finally had a name, and that was so powerful to me, and figuring that out. But it's something that continued to just to progress in my life and exponentially grow sometimes. And when I was in my sophomore year of high school, I had actually made the decision that I didn't really want to be alive anymore. And I didn't really have anything worth living for, and didn't have a lot of friends, and felt like all my friends just kept leaving or would mistreat me or do something. And I was just in a black, dark spot. And I had made that decision to self-transition into the next life. And by probably, honestly, what can only be described as an act of God, that didn't happen. And there was that event, and as I continue to progress, my mental health is something that has always been a challenge. I'm always waking up with a lower baseline of happiness than everybody else, and I have to fight really hard to work my way out of that. And later in adulthood, I got into a really long-term relationship, and it ended up being something that was not positive, and something where I was not being treated well. And I had to make the decision eventually to take myself out of that situation to give myself a greater level of happiness in the future. But that put me into probably the blackest and darkest space that I've ever been in my entire life. And this was pretty close to when I was going to come to Africa with you for the first time. And I just was in a darkness. And for me, when I'm in a darkness, I find it really hard to allow myself to just wallow in that darkness and feel my emotions. And I should probably do that more, but I tend to get really proactive. And so I was like, how can I climb out of this? And that's where Africa came, and that's where Moti started. And that's where I really knew that being a mother in whatever aspect that looked like was my calling, because when I spend time with those children, I climb out of my darkness. And in return, I can take all of my experience and the wisdom I've learned from it, and I can relate to these children and say, hey, I felt those emotions too. And so I think it just comes from a lot of those factors, and kind of like my journey of going through life to kind of sit where I am now.
There's this aspect of my book, Familiar Stranger, where I kind of talked about like the transition between like teenage life to adulthood. And for a lot of like teenagers, that particular transition, most time it's like so painful that it make them feel like I want to end it.
Yeah.
Mostly when you don't have the support system to help you navigate that stage of your life.
Yeah.
Within this transition is something that we need support.
Yes. Yeah.
Adults that are in tune with their emotions, that are conscious to be able to support. It was Mr. Amon that was talking to Jon Snow, and he was like, kill the boy, John, kill the boy, and let the man be born.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what is happening in that transition.
Yeah.
But it's not like physically ending it, but being able to just do that transition. But doing it alone can be really painful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your life, because you had an adult in your life that you could speak with within that time. That's like, okay, we need to like maybe go for therapy or so, and then help you put a name, to what you're going through.
Yeah.
How does putting a name to what you're going through give power to you?
Yeah. It does exactly what you said. Everyone likes to feel in control. I actually think that human beings are people that, it may look different, but thrive on like any kind of structure or solidarity. Like there is something in the human brain that really wants to know like what's up. And so when you find out and you can put names to things, it gives you a lot of control. And especially with children, when you give children control of things, they actually do really well. Like they want to feel in control. They want to feel helpful. They want to feel needed. And in return, they want to feel that way about themselves too. They want to feel like, okay, I have control over this. I can make decisions about how I'm feeling. And I think the main thing is when you figure out what's actually going on, then you can properly figure out how to react to what's going on. And that reaction is everything, because it's either going to create a positive consequence or a negative consequence. And often when children think about consequences, they only think about negative consequences. If they're feeling a heightened emotion, they're going to really heighten it. And then they're going to only think about things that can create a negative consequence. Yeah. But it's really important that they understand that now that they have control, now that they have a name, now we have two different roads, and there's one road that you really want to take. And we want to push you towards that road. We want to have you make the decision that's going to create a positive consequence. And so when you gain a name to something, it's yes about knowing what it is, but it's more about knowing how to react. And so when children know, okay, I'm actually not angry. I'm actually just disappointed right now. Or actually, I'm just hungry. Or actually, I just am lonely right now. I'm not feeling anger. I don't need to go fight with somebody. I don't need to lash out. I don't need this. I need to feed myself. I need to have alone time. I need to take a walk. I need to like take a couple of deep breaths and regain control for a second. When they understand actually what's happening to them, then they can change the outcome of what's going to happen to them now.
Yeah.
And that really is in their control. And it's important, even if a child has a trusted adult, that a child is learning how to regulate that on their own. Because when you get to that transition between being a child and being an adult, and honestly, even when you transition through different phases of adulthood, like everybody needs this skill. Then when they get to that transition, they're like, okay, I'm in a way on my own now. Like there's been many times where I have been in the darkest of darkest places I've ever been, and my mom is 10,000 miles away from me. And as much as I love her and as much as she's a resource, like she's not there with me and she can't control, and my therapist is not on speed dial, and I have to know how to regulate those. And so if we can prep children as much as we can before that transition comes, then when they get to that transition, they can tell themselves like, okay, not all hope is lost.
Yeah.
Like I'm in control of this, and I don't have to give up, but maybe I do have to react differently. And they'll know that, and there's power in that control.
Wow, I love the way you articulate that. And it just takes me to this quote from Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
I think it's a quote that we both really like. And it says, it is easier to build strong children than to fix broken adults. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My organization, the Maven Art Academy, the Maven Art Foundation, we have the Maven Art Academy. Within the Maven Art Academy, one of the major things that we're focused on is like child mental health.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do, like in the early stage for every child that's come through us, we make sure that these children get to like learn the names of each emotion that they feel.
Yeah.
And just be really conscious about it. We do it with play, we do it with drama, we do it in different kind of ways, sometimes cards and stuff like that, because we want them to understand the emotions that they feel. If I'm hungry, I know I'm hungry. If I'm anxious, I know I'm anxious. You know, you being able to like just recognize those emotions first of all, give you like the key to the door. And then as you progress, you start to like pick up other things and stuff like that. And I feel like emotional regulation, it's something that is really underestimated. And I feel like it's something that our schools need to like work more
Absolutely.
on. And because you find a lot of adults that's they are grown, but they are not functioning from their executive state of mind. And when you're not functioning from your executive state of mind, it is difficult for you to be able to like help children that are just growing, and they have to like learn all this aspect of like emotional regulation. And this will take me to my next question for you. What role the faith like play in your progression?
Yeah. So faith, you and I are from the same faith, obviously, but faith is everything, because without the faith and without my Savior in heaven, like I wouldn't even be me. Like he gave me everything, and in return, that faith is everything to me. And so I is what we call like a record born. So I was born into the church and grew up my whole life. And my whole life, I really knew that God was real. Like I really did. I felt like I had personal experiences with him, and I prayed and I did things like that. And I never really doubted. There was never any doubt in my mind. But, you know, I was still like at home. And so I had parents pursuing that and siblings that pursued that. And that was just kind of my life. I didn't really know any different. And when I got to college, it was kind of the same. And then I met this person that I dated who is not a member of that faith, and who also didn't really enjoy a lot of aspects, if any aspects, about that faith. And I didn't lose my faith during that entire relationship. I knew that God was real, and I still talked to him, and I went to church, but there was no active pursuit of faith. And I think there's a difference between believing, like saying, hey, I believe, and then, hey, I'm actively pursuing this faith, and I'm actively pursuing a relationship with my Father in heaven. Those are two different courses. They're two different avenues. And at this point in time, I was just believing. And when I decided to leave this relationship, I think there was a lot of heavy influence from God in that it was right around the time that I had gotten my first HXP assignment ever. And I knew I was coming to Ghana, and I had this list of my kids' names, and I have always loved the temple in our faith, the LDS temple. And so I made a goal. I was living in Hawaii at the time, that every Friday morning at like 5:30 a.m. I would go to the temple. And so I would go to the temple, and we have this thing called the prayer roll, and I would write down each one of my kids' names that was coming to Ghana, and I would stick them in the prayer roll one by one, and I would say a prayer like, hey, I'm here for you now, God, and I know I kind of went away for a while and I was not pursuing you, but I'm here, and I want to be here for these kids, and I want you to mold me into what I can be for them. And I watched slowly as I started to grab onto my Heavenly Father more, that he started to grab onto me more. And I truly was in the most dark of place that I think I could ever exist. And I watched, though, as I brought him more into my life and I actively pursued him, that slowly that light crept into everywhere. Like all of my crevices were filled with him. And I came to Africa, and I felt like I was what I needed to be. And he became me. And I sometimes can't always answer the questions, like, why do bad things happen? But I do believe in the Lord's timing. And one of my favorite scriptures is Psalm 135. And it says, I will wait on the Lord, my soul doth wait, and in his word I do hope. And that's what I had to hold on to, was the fact that I sometimes had to wait on the Lord for that light to come. But I knew that if I hold on to him and I actively pursue him, that he will. And so now I know when I'm re-entering a dark place, that it's not time to leave him, but it's time to hold on to him. And in return, also, when I'm in a happy state, it's not time to lose him. It's time to continue to build that relationship so that I'm better set up when I need to do things like transition or go through a scary moment. He has my back. And so now I've come to the realization where I'm so strong in my faith, and I know, like, Heavenly Father is here for me. And if he wasn't here for me, none of this would work. Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to do this with these kids, and I wouldn't be able to grow, and et cetera, et cetera. And all of that is possible because of faith.
Yeah. Sometime this year, Kelsey Christensen, one of the directors for HXP, contacted me and was like, Cornelius, I would like you to just give a talk on this particular topic. And I was just, every single time I'm kind of like called to give a talk or stuff like that. It's like, it's not just for the people, but for me too. Totally. It blesses me in a unique way because it brings some level of consciousness to me. Yeah. And I kind of like noticed that at a particular point in my life, I moved from it is what it is to trusting God with all your heart. And I found that it is what it is just obscures you from the miracle Heavenly Father is about to like make happen. And you of course you can't connect the dots moving forward. You can only connect it looking back. But are you patient enough to allow it to play? And most time because I'm like, oh, it is what it is, I just I kind of obscure myself from seeing what happens. And I have seen a lot of time how Heavenly Father just creates like massively extraordinary moments from combination of small insignificant moments that just add up together. He has a subtle way of just creating the symphony and just making this whole miracle happen. And the moment I realized that, I went from that space of like, it is what it is, to like, oh, trusting God with all my heart, and just
Yeah.
now I face challenges and I'm like excited, because I'm like, okay,
Yes.
I can't wait to see the miracle that
Yeah.
is about to come out of this. And
Yeah.
it's I think it just kind of like so aligned with what you just said.
Yeah.
And this takes me to my next question. What are the core principles that you live by?
Oh my gosh. Always, for me, it's like three things: love, listen, and effort. For me, that's kind of like my trifecta. Is I think it's so important to listen to people. I'm all about empathy. I'm a really big empath. I feel like I take on people's emotions and I kind of store them, and I hold space for them. And it's important that you listen to people. People have stories to be shared, and things to be expressed. And they need people to listen. And then it's important to take what people tell you in life and just to love them. Like, everyone is so different. All of my kids are so different from one another. And when I choose to love them regardless of that, it really like brings them into me. And so I love to love, and then I love to put effort into people. Like, if you've listened and then you've loved and now you're going to put effort into that person, that's what creates a community of happiness and a community of this exponential growth that's positive. All of a sudden everybody is growing because everybody is listening and loving and supporting. And when you put effort into somebody, they're going to learn to put effort into themselves. And so I really believe in leading every relationship in my life and every aspect of my life with those three things. And I also, it's so interesting what you were talking about, like, it is what it is. One of my favorite quotes is, sometimes the grass is greener because it's fake. I say that all the time. And I think we get so caught up in like, well, frick, like, my life is what it is and all this stuff is happening to me, but like, his life is like this, and like, why don't I have this, and why don't I have this, and why don't I have this? But maybe like sometimes it is what it is, but let's like sit back and watch what it is going to become. Like, right now you might be like, oh, well, it is what it is. Like, that sucks. It's stuck like this. Well, okay, hold on. It might be what it is right now, but let's watch what it's going to become. Because maybe that needed to happen. And now we're going to enter into this stage, and that actually is going to be more glorious or magnificent or more whatever than you ever could have imagined. And we get too caught up in wanting other people's stories. We get too caught up in that instead of listening to their stories and accepting their stories and being happy for them in their stories. And then at the same time, we're almost too focused on our own story. It's like, it's all about us all the time. And maybe it's supposed to be that way right now. And maybe someone's going to come into our life and they're going to listen and they're going to love us and they're going to put effort into us. And then something's going to snowball and something else is going to happen. And you're going to be like, whoa, now it is what it is. And I'm happy that it is that way. And that's what I wish, especially children got more, especially during that transition phase, is I have kids all the time. I'm very blessed with the life I've gotten to live and do a lot of travel and do a lot of outreach and have a lot of cool experiences. And my kids will always be like, oh, like, I just want to be you so bad. And I'm like, why the heck you want to be me? I'm like, why? I'm like, I woke up this morning and cried in the bathroom for 30 minutes. I'm like, you don't want to be me. And you have to think about the full picture of everybody's lives. And like, in my life, my dad has cancer now, and he had this big accident, and this happens, and I really struggle with depression, and I'm really good at hiding it, and I don't have a lot of friends and things like this. But people are looking at my life from the outside, and they're saying like, I want that so bad. And I'm like, no, you want your life so bad. Like, you need to want your life so bad. And so I love them and I listen to them. I put effort to try and show them like, no, your life is special and your life is magnetic. Like, you're magnetic as a person, and you don't want my life, but I want you to want your life. And I do that through loving and listening and trying to teach them the power in not comparing yourself to other people's stories. And when you're not comparing yourself, but instead pouring yourself into other people, I think that's when magical things start to happen.
So I love how you put those three core of yours: love, listen, effort. I feel people would not open up to you if they don't see that you love them. And I've seen you do this like a lot of time. Like, you love them first,
Yeah.
and then they open up to you. And why they open up to you, you actually sincerely listen to them,
Yeah.
and then you put effort in in every single thing, in
Yeah.
every single way. You just put that effort to to just to just make them feel better, to make them see that God loved them, to
Yeah.
as in just those efforts means so much.
Yeah.
And I remember the president of Mavenat. I was speaking with her sometime around 2018,
Yeah.
and she said this to me one day. I can't remember exactly the conversation, but it just stuck. She said, "Effort is a choice,"
Yes.
and I was like, "Dang, this makes sense." I don't know, in a unique way, it just expounded in my
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
and I felt like every kid needs to know this. So on the Maven at school, we had it like just like on the wall, like
Yeah.
effort is a choice.
Yeah.
Like you choose to put in effort or not. If you have the opportunity right now to like speak with an audience,
Yeah.
teenagers, like, and you know that what you're going to say right now is going to change a lot for them.
Yeah.
What are you going to like put out there?
There's so many different things that I could say, especially the teenagers who I just love them so much. Something that I recently heard, and I can't remember where, but it was in a gospel lesson. It was in a spiritual setting, and they said, "You can live up to your privilege," was the phrase. You can live up to your privilege. And what they meant by that was not your financial privilege, or I'm pretty sure we were in the States, and not that you can live up to the privilege of living in the United States or things like that. What you can live up to the privileges is the privilege that God has given you by being a child of God. You can live up to that privilege. You can exceed God's expectation, and God made you as a child of God. And we said that we believe that in the afterlife, you can become like a God, and this privilege that God has given you to have a mortal life and to have a body and to have experiences, you can live up to that privilege, and you can live up to be the best version of yourself, and you can live up to the privilege of the love that God has given you. Like, you can lean into that, and you can live up to that, and you can make intentional and smart decisions to be able to live up to that privilege in the best way possible. And I just think that's something that is important to remember, is children sometimes think that they are powerless, especially teenagers, and really they are the most powerful. I think they are the most underestimated people on planet Earth. They're so smart, and they're so willing to give, and they have so much potential that's just stored inside of them. And if you can teach them, like, what are you going to do to live up to your privilege? What are you going to do to live up to your potential? Would be another way of saying that. Yeah. Then I think that they are going to open up and blossom. And so I think that I would teach them that, like, this is your time to live up to your privilege. It's not too early. It's not too late. You haven't missed a gap. And somebody else taught me one time in a gospel lesson, like, if you thought that you've messed everything up, just remember that you're not that powerful. Like, you're not powerful enough to mess everything up. There's only one person who's powerful enough to mess everything up. Like, you don't have that power. There's only one person in the universe, spiritual and earthly, that has that power. So if you think you've messed it all up, don't give yourself that credit. Like, you're not good enough to do that. You're not big enough to do that. And know that, like, now is a great starting point. Wherever you are right now is a great starting point. And God is ready to love you right at this starting line. He doesn't love you at the finish line. He doesn't love you when you're in the middle of the race. He loves you right now, before you've even started on whatever this journey of living up to that privilege he's given you is. And there's no time like the present. And we've talked about this, but Kathy Headley Miner, she started Mothers Without Borders in Zambia, which is another outreach program I've worked with. And she always says love works. And it's the only thing that does. And I've talked with you a lot about this, but I would actually say something different. And I would say that love combined with sincere effort works. And that's the only thing that does. And when children will learn to love themselves, and when they'll put effort into themselves, and they'll love others and put effort into others, that's when they start to live up to their privilege. because that's the whole point of this journey. That's why we get to have this experience of mortality, and they're powerful enough to do that. So
that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Yes, I would like you to end it with this. I've heard you kind of like give like an acronym to joy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So a man named Spencer Taggart taught me this. He was one of my professors at BYU Hawaii, and he said it one day, and I have thought about it every day since. And it's joy. Jesus, others, you. Jesus, others, you. Jesus comes first. He's first. Which, why wouldn't he be? He's the Almighty, and he gave us this experience, him and our Heavenly Father. And then others. You put others first. Because when you pour yourself into others, they're going to pour themselves into you. And even if they don't, even if you end up pouring yourselves in and they don't pour themselves into you, you will have done something good. And you will have used that privilege that you've been given. And then you have to take care of yourself. It's so important to be able to prosper and grow and create connections when you pour into yourself. So Jesus, others, and you, that's kind of the cycle by which I live my life by. And I think if you go in that order and pour all the efforts into all three of those categories, you'll be amazed at how much your own life starts to change.
Yes. I love this. I love this so much that it's kind of like take me to this particular aspect, because I know the moment you tell people that put others first before you, they tend to feel like no. That even the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
And most time people always feel like, oh no, I have to first of all love myself first before I can love my neighbor. Yeah. And okay, what would you say about that?
I think, and I've talked about this, I think in this podcast and with you all the time, that you really have to lose yourself to find yourself. And the best way to lose yourself is in the pursuit of loving others.
Yeah.
When you love others, I think it helps you identify things to love about yourself. Because one, you'll start noticing them. And two, other people will start pointing them out to you like, oh, did you know that you're a great listener? And you're like, oh, I am? Like, I guess I didn't realize that. Like, thank you so much for telling me that. And then you're able to cultivate your own talents and your own skills and your own love for yourself based on your love for other people and therefore their love for you. And so I think when you lose yourself in others, you find yourself. But I also think connection is everything. And I think it could be really hard. Like if there was no one else on planet Earth right now and they would only come around by the time that I loved myself. I think if I was surrounded by no one, it would be a lot harder to find love for me. If I'm on my own all the time, if I'm not creating connections with people, if I'm not expelling love and empathy and sincerity and all these things, I think it could take a really long time to love myself.
Yeah.
There's no connection to base off of. There's no mutual commitment. And all three of those things, Jesus and others, it's like a two-way friendship. You commit to them, you commit to Jesus Christ, you commit to them, and they'll commit to you. And when that commitment happens is when growth actually happens on both sides. And so I think, when people are like, oh no, I'm loving others, then nothing is happening to me. Yes, it is. Because you're doing a good thing for you and you're doing a good thing for them, and they're going to return, because that's how mutual friendship works. And that's how those relationships work. And in return, when you're giving to Christ, you think Christ isn't going to uplift you? You think Christ isn't just going to take care of that third component all by himself? When you do number one, love Christ, he's going to do number three for you. And then in the meantime, you can focus on doing number two, which is loving others. And so there is no like, I have to do this first. I have to do this, blah, blah, blah. There is none of that.
Yeah.
Like the goal is to just love everyone. And when he says like, love thy neighbor as thyself, he also is saying in there, like, yes, have respect for yourself, have love for yourself, do this for yourself. But just because you love yourself doesn't mean that you can forget your neighbor. Yeah. That's why it is the second greatest commandment. And the first greatest commandment is to love God.
Yeah.
And so it all goes together. It's not these separate components that have to fight. They're not fighting. This is not a competition. They all go together so that when they come together and are unified, everyone is taken care of. Everyone is blessed. And so I think people actually be better off loving themselves.
I love the way you put it. And I think that particular phrase should not be changed, but I think people should understand it more like this. Like, love your neighbor as you would love yourself.
Yeah.
And this is it. Most time, we don't have the capacity to love ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know how to love
Yes.
ourselves until when we start to love our neighbor. And this is it. It's something that happened in my life. Like when I went through this very tragic aspect of my life, and I came down here to Ghana, and within that time, I couldn't even look at myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as I started to like pour out love from wherever it is, I don't know where it come from, but as I started to like do stuff and put effort to those young ones, I started to find love for myself. And this is it. We always feel like we are taking love from us and pouring out. But the truth is that we're never empty.
Yes.
Because the source of love is what we are connected to.
Yes.
Yeah. And right now, you just don't have the capacity to open yourself for that. So to do that is fetching from his love and giving to others.
Yeah.
And then that opens the door for you. And I feel like that is just kind of the way to go about this. Thank you so much for sharing all that.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's just been beautiful, and I know that this would go a long way in touching a lot of lives, and I know that a lot of people would want to hear more from you, and I look forward to having you here.
Thanks.